So welcome everyone, and so good to have you with us. This is our first Kannico webinar of the year, and we are talking about the roadmap for the year. We are going to cover your development plan. So this is the roadmap. That's what we're talking about. And we're not going to overcomplicate this. I would like you to come out of today with something, a template that you know you can put into practice. That's straightforward, it's simple, it has enough complexity that you're happy with, but you also know that you can easily put it into effect. If you're a one-man operation, a one-person operation, you know that you can handle this by yourself, no big deal. If you have a few more people, it can be shared, people will understand it, they'll be able to follow it, and you can show it to your board, you can say, this is what we're working from, these are the goals. And trust me, this can be enhanced too. You can play with this, you can put different categories. There's so many different, you can do different tabs so that you've separated it by the different groups that are working in different sections. There's a lot you can do with this. But before we get into that, we're going to talk a little bit about how we get to implementing the plan. How is that even going to take place? Because we typically start out the year with these great intentions and these objectives, and we know what we want, we can see it, but somehow we get derailed along the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So welcome again. I'm Kirsten Stevens. I know most of you. It is so good to have you here for our first session this year. This session is going to cover the planning, and we'll talk through the different sections and how we're going to get there. Next month, we're going to talk about financial strategies, and that's going to be a really, really good session. We're going to have a guest speaker, and I encourage you to keep that on your calendar because it's also a great time of year to be looking at budgets and just sort of getting a handle on what your finances or how they're going to look for the year, what your planning financially is going to look like. So we know that you wear a lot of hats and you are managing programs and you're building relationships and you are working with donors and you're writing grants, you're leading teams, and there's a lot happening. But it doesn't have to be chaotic. There can be a lot happening and you can be very busy, and it does not have to be chaotic. So being chaotic just means that there's a lack of organization and the lack of preparation, that we're approaching things randomly, right? We're approaching things as they pop up. So what we want to do is really focus on this roadmap, on this plan that's going to align your efforts with your mission, allow you to focus your energy where it needs to be, where you're going to yield the most results. And that means sometimes you have to let some things go. You just have to let them go. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter if the board thinks it's a priority. There are going to be things that are going to have to be let go in order to focus more of your energy on the things that are going to yield the best results. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. So this really is about planning, but it's also about your leadership, because your leadership is going to be reflected in how that plan is executed. First of all, how is it put together? And then how is it executed? So we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be achieving today and what we're going to come out of this with. And it would be, there we go. All right. So we all know who I am. And so let's talk a little bit about what happens when we have some issues with our leadership style and what we're going to do. So when you think about how you're going to organize yourself for the year, you probably have some ideas in your head of the things that you'd like to accomplish. It's getting them mapped out that is actually going to help. And so if we've got that mental overload, if we're feeling constantly fatigued, if we're feeling like we're just not focused, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling completely burnt out, that's a reflection of being very reactive and not having the planning in place. So we also have the emotional toll that it takes, the fact that you feel anxious, you feel like you're in survival mode, you feel like you're desperate, you feel like you just cannot seem to make any headway. All of these are symptoms of just not having a plan in place that can be so helpful. And then, of course, we've talked before about leadership burnout and how important it is. and how we want to try and really set some standards for how we want to operate in the future, how we want to lead in the future, what kind of model do we want to be for our organization. I really don't relish the idea of having my team think that I'm just, running around like crazy and I don't really have a handle on things and I don't have time. I noticed this a few years ago. It was before the pandemic, but a couple of consultants that were working with me, we were partnering on projects, and they would say, well, we wanted to talk to you about it, but you're so busy all the time. Oh, we just know you're so frantic. And I thought, man, I am not proud of that. I'm not proud of that. I don't want to be known for that. I want to be known as someone thoughtful and intelligent and intentional and deliberate with my time and with the people I work with. So I've really started to shift, and that was the beginning of it, where I really started to shift and think, okay, being intentional is so much more important. And so that brings us to our aligning with purpose. So a purpose-driven roadmap. So that means superfluous things do not belong on this. This has to be aligned with your organization, with your mission, with your vision. And again, we're talking about prioritization. So if you know that you have 7 things that need to be sorted out with your programming, those are big issues. So programming is something that needs to be worked on, and you're having some major issues with your board. Well, right there, I would say programming and board. So maybe assessing programming and realigning, and then looking at your board and what are some of the weaknesses with the board. Those are definitely 2 things that need to be prioritized this year. And if a board member has said, oh, well, we should have a gala, we should start having galas, let's do a gala this year, and it's not really aligned with your why, you've never done one before, and now you're taking on a whole new project. No, that's a hard no. There's no gala this year. We're not doing a gala. We're not going to start a gala in a year where we still don't have sustainable funding. We haven't secured the infrastructure of our organization, and the board isn't engaged and healthy and supportive. I mean, we are going to have to make choices like that. But I will say that some flexibility is always going to be needed as well. So make sure that you have the ability to make some decisions that, allow you to change course if you have to eliminate things if you have to. Sometimes they're just not going to work. But taking on too much is probably the biggest thing that I think we all suffer from. So if we can align with purpose, if we can align with our intentionality and how we want to show up this year, then I think it'll help us make some decisions and say no a little more often. So let's just think about 3 primary principles as we go into this roadmap concept. The 3 principles that I think are going to make you successful in execution of this. And the first one is consistency. So if you have a plan and you look at the plan every single day, you have it somewhere posted up in front of you on a whiteboard, on a cork board, whatever it may be, on your screen, on your project management system. If you talk with the team and the people involved regularly about this plan, if you review it with your board and you present it at quarterly board meetings, and you really devote yourself every month, every week to chipping away at the pieces of the plan, you will be successful. Consistency. It's like I say, I know it's really easy for me to say this, but I've gotten in such a habit now. I say that 2 days a week, at least one day, it's always one day, and typically it's a Friday morning, I spend the first hour to 2 hours of my day writing thank you notes. I have been doing it for years, and I still do it. Every Friday, I get up in the morning and I write thank you notes. And sometimes it's 2, and sometimes it's 5, and sometimes it's people who didn't even really need a thank you note, but it was just a check-in. But I am faithful with that. And it's amazing. People love getting a thank you note, still a handwritten thank you note. We'll come up with these elements of consistency that for you, and if you have to write down, this is what I need to do every day. I need to check my plan. I need to check in with 2 major donors. If you need to map it out, that's fine. But the consistency is going to make a big difference. The second one is immersion. You have to immerse yourself in this process. We cannot dabble. We were all taught in school that we get material, we get content, we read it, we memorize it, we learn it. take a test, pass a test, and move on to the next thing, right? So it's just fleeting. And we've become like that as adults, where we read something, we scan it, we take away what we want from it. Maybe we implement it, maybe we don't. We're dabbling. We're dabbling. This, you can't dabble in this. You are going to have to immerse yourself. You need to learn everything you can about what you're doing. If you've decided that this year you're going to launch a planned giving program for your major donors, you need to learn everything you can about planned giving. So this is about also educating yourself. And that's why if we have 2 to 3 strategies that we can manage, we can really fully immerse ourselves in those. But immersion is critical. We cannot be superficial. We have to follow through on everything. We have to explore everything fully. If we ask our board members to give us 10 names and email addresses and phone numbers of prospects to add to our list, we better follow up with them. We better follow up with them. And that doesn't just mean add them to the newsletter list. That means you sit with your board member who gave you those 10 names and you say, okay, John Smith, what am I doing with him? I added him to the newsletter list. Well, we've got that dinner coming up. Shall I invite him? Or is he just a phone call? Oh, he doesn't like phone calls. Okay, no problem. What else can we do with him? I mean, there has to be a full immersion into each step of this process. And then the last one is the mindset. If you think this is hard, it's hard, but it's all in how you approach it. I think the people that had to deal with war and famine, and that's hard. The people who work in coal mines and construction, that's hard. Really, with all the tools we have these days, is this hard? We have digital, all kinds of digital resources at our fingertips. We've got brilliant people. We've got virtual assistants. We have everything we need. So it's hard if we think it's hard. So it's all about our mindset. And I think if we can approach it and pull ourselves out of that mindset and say, you know what, I'm just digging in. This is what I'm doing. I'm going in 100% because I don't want to be at the end of the year, next year, thinking, should have tried that, wish I'd tried that. Let's just do it. So those are the 3 principles that I would like you to have in your mind as we go into this. So let me start by, I'm going to skip over to this one. So the effective planning. One of the first tools that I really like is, and this you can use this as you're working on the plan, is time blocking. Let me just stop my screen share for 1 second. I want to know who does time blocking right now, and do you know what that is? Can you raise your hand if you do time blocking? Does anyone do it besides me? Okay. No. Does anyone know what it is? Or have a guess?
I think I know what it means. I have an idea as to what it
Okay.
means.
Okay, what do you think it is, Eduardo?
Well, obviously to block some time to do certain things, certain specific things.
Yes,
Monday, I'll
exactly.
call the doctor, whatever.
Exactly. And it's chunks of time. Okay.
Chunks
It's
of
it's
time, yeah.
productive work time. It's when you look at your calendar a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, and you say Tuesday from 3 to 6 in the afternoon, I am absolutely, oh, good job, honey. I do too. It's very helpful. I am unavailable. I am absolutely unavailable because I need to work on 3 blogs for our website and, I'm writing something for programming, or I'm rewriting our manual, or I'm revising, I'm taking a look at our bylaws and going through them with a fine-tooth comb. But I'm setting aside 2 big blocks of time a week, and they are untouchable. They are sacred. You cannot book appointments. You cannot break that time. And it's, yes, exactly, Jordan. It's offline. You turn everything off. You turn off your phone. You time block. And it is incredible. The funny thing is, when you first start to try and get used to this, and I don't know if you noticed this, honey, initially, oh, I was so restless. every 15 minutes, you just sort of start to feel like, oh, and then you get back into it, right? Because we're so used to the constant distractions and stopping constantly, but not really finishing a thought. I've been trying to do a lot of writing. You can't write unless you do time blocking. Well, it's the same with planning. This planning process is going to require you to do some time blocking. You're going to have to set that time aside. All right, so let's go back into, I just want to look at the chat and see what other, yeah, you keep getting interrupted. I know, Astrid, you have to just shut it off. Yeah, I agree, Vicky. I also don't punish myself. Things are going to happen. Things are going to come up. I mean, I've given up my time block to go to the doctor. I've given up my time block for something like that. There are just days when things happen. But I think if we can set the intention and just know and put it on your calendar that that's just a time that can't be booked, then nobody else takes that time either. So at least we need to give it a try, right? All right, so where are we? Desktop 1. I think it's this one. Is it this one or this one? I think it's this one. Okay, great. You guys can see my screen again, right? All right, the 80-20 rule. So focus on 20% of the tasks that drive 80% of the results. Again, everyone's going to come with ideas. We have all these different things that people are suggesting and volunteers out of the goodness of their heart are suggesting. Just keep it to the 20% of the tasks that drive 80% of the results and let everything else go. You do not have to be everywhere. You do not have to do everything. You don't have the luxury of doing that right now. One day when you have a team of 20, you can do that. They can all go out and do all the 80% of the things, and you can be focusing on the top 20%, which hopefully is going to be relationship building with your major donors and foundations. The priority matrices, so categorize your tasks by impact and urgency, and make sure you're leaving off the low impact, high urgency, low urgency, low impact. All of those have to get dropped, and then make sure you're doing monthly check-in points. All right, so let's hop into your roadmap. Now, you just see here. All right, we're going to talk about these in a second, and we'll talk about those in a second too. All right, so let's go into the different roadmaps that we have, because I want to be sure that we have enough time to talk these through. All right, I mentioned I have 3. The first one is, let me pull this up. Now, these are all in Google Drive templates. And let's see. Okay, so I'm going to show you this one first. We'll start with the simpler one. Let me share my screen again. All right. Okay, so this has your monthly breakdown on the left. This is heavily focused on development and donors, but you can add anything you want, obviously, to each section. And actually, what I like to do is maybe not call it donor groups, but just call it the group, the target group. So I would put, this is donor. Maybe if I have some board activity, I would put that in a different color. Maybe I have, I don't know, a third thing, foundations, maybe I'm putting that in a different color. So our SMART goals. So, right, we all know about our SMART goals. So we want to be sure that we're making that they have some kind of time bound, that they're relevant and they're actionable and measurable. So this would be a great goal. Retain 20% of lapsed donors. How about regain? Actually, not retain, regain. Increase the number of new recurring donors to 50 or more. Increase the amount of recurring donor gifts to 2,000 a month. So these are very concrete, right? These are very concrete. What is the activity that we're going to tie into that? Well, we can maybe do a survey and survey these donors and find out why they're no longer with us. Here we could do a new donor welcome Zoom. I love the idea of welcome Zooms. I'm such a fan of those. I love focus groups too. I think those are always really effective when you have people that give over a certain level and you start to make them feel as though they really play a big role in the organization by honoring their wisdom, their experience, their input. What's the communication plan? Who's the team member involved? Is there any revenue attached to it? Is there any expense? And what's the due date? So again, this would be a simple version. And we've got things like donor volunteer opportunities, personalized appeals, renewals, coffees. So for your new donors, one-on-one coffee with 5 potential major donors. What's the communication plan? Who's going to do it? What's the cost? So definitely if there are any costs attached, for example, mailings, I always put, if there are mailings, I always put what the postage and the printing is going to be. It's important. And it's great if you can also compare it to last year. So we're going to look at another one in a second, which has last year's expenses. So we have the estimated revenue, the estimated expense, and then the date that we're hoping to have that. Donor upgrades. Here's another one. Recurring donor appeal, personalized appeal, phone calls, and we want to engage the board on this one. Great. Okay. We're saying the revenue could be $1,500. We want those done by the 30th of August. October, we've got site visits, an email invite with a personal phone call, engage the board and volunteers. We've got donor upgrades. Now, October, November, December typically is when we start with our end of year solicitation. So it starts to get really active in terms of solicitation. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your, for example, your Giving Tuesday is somewhere in here and it's tied into those 3 solicitations that you're doing towards the end of year. But again, we're looking at October, donor retention, site visits, email invite, cost, date, donor upgrades, auto renewals, maybe upgrading to, auto renew, right? Instead of having just a one-off gift, personalized thank you. So this is a simple one. Let's take a look at another simple one. This is actually one that I like, and I use this with some of the people that we work with. So this isn't separated by what the activity is specifically. It does say who's really responsible for it, but it could be anything. It could be working on the case for support. It could be your grant research, could be reviewing bylaws, donation letters. It's all kind of mixed in, but all of the activities are here. So this is the first quarter of the year. Who's responsible for it? The cost detail, the projected expenses. So this is, if it's going to cost $500, this would be $200 for something and $300 for something else. Any projected donations that we anticipate, the prior year results, and then what's the goal? What is the actual goal of this? And a task. So any tasks that are associated. If I'm looking at, okay, we have not reviewed or written our case for support, or it needs to be updated, or we have a brand new program we're launching, so we want to incorporate that. Great. The purpose is going to be to deepen donor relationships, provide it to new prospects. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to use existing materials, compile our images and infographics, gather testimonials, quotes from family, board members, etc. So let's run through some of these, because this might spark as you work through this. And again, you're going to get this, so you can use any of this, to sort of help you get ideas. But January is a great time for you to be doing grant research. It's the beginning of the year, and you want to have that grants calendar. You've all seen from when we do the trainings on grant research, you've seen the grants template, the calendar, right? Where we have the tabs, we have the all of the grants, we've got them listed in a column by the month when each one is due. And that way you can start to put these. Once you have your grant research and you've come up with your prospects, oh, February 15th, we have such and such grant due. So that goes in the development plan. So grant research to be done at the beginning of the year, highly recommended. I always like to look for 30 potential prospects. To me, that is the sweet spot, because by the time you cull through the 30 over the course of the year, sometimes some didn't work out, some did. Maybe you were able to submit 10 or 12 out of those 30 for whatever reason. Some maybe you have to put off till next year, but 30 is a really good number I have found to work with. And you can use Foundation Directory, you can use GrantStation or Grant Tracker, but you want to prepare that spreadsheet of grant results so that you can plug in your dates, because then you're also going to plug in, let's say you already have your 2025 plan. Well, if the grant report is due January 15th, you can go ahead and put that on your plan for next year so that everything is in one place. All right, it's a good time to review your bylaws and board policies. Do a board reset. Maybe not a board retreat, but how about a 2-hour board meeting where we say, okay, this is our annual meeting. Board, I'd like you to review the bylaws. We haven't done that for 3 or 4 years. Let's make sure that they're still accurate. And then let's take a look at our policies and make sure that the policies are still relevant. Do we have everything we need? Oh, we had that situation with that donor last year. Do we have a gift acceptance policy? No, we don't. Maybe we should find a template for one and go ahead and adopt it this year. So this is a good chance to do those things too. And again, it's healthy. It's a good clarification for the board. And you can review with a consultant, with an attorney. You can review with a board member. You often have board members that are highly qualified that can help you review some of these things. Your end of year donor tax letters. Another great thing to be working on right now. Whether they want it or not, need it or not, ask for it or not, it's a really good gesture. It's a wonderful thing to do. Who currently does these end of year tax letters? Can I get a hands up? I'm looking at a different screen because that's where I can see all of you right now. Valerie, you do them? Excellent. Okay. It's a good practice to get into. Lulis, you do them as well? Fantastic. Okay. So if you have a donor database, a CRM, like Bloomerang, probably Donor Perfect. Tanaka, does Donor Perfect do them as well? I think Donor Perfect does them. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
So if you have a CRM, a donor database, you can easily generate those letters. Often it's already pre-populated, like the letter is pre-made for you, the template, and it'll just plug in the number, the field, the name of the person, the address, and so on. You can generate those letters. Now, up to you if you'd like to mail them or email them. These days, I'm finding that a lot of organizations have mostly emails. They don't even have the mailing addresses because a lot of people are just donating online. So you could just email them out. That's fine. And you can even put at the bottom, if you would like to receive a paper copy of this letter, please let us know. We'll be happy to mail it to you. But it's such a nice gesture. And the great thing is, it's another way to touch your donors. So if you send the email out and it's attached, which it typically will be, then you have an opportunity to write a nice little email to them. And so what if it's in mass? It doesn't matter. You're still touching them another way, right? So I like it. I think it shows efficiency, and it prevents people coming back to you and saying, hey, I never got all my receipts from last year. Well, you've already sent them what they need. All right. And then your monthly newsletter. So I always include the monthly newsletter every month, so we remember that that's on there. Let's see, February is a good time for donor thank you calls. You can reach out to people maybe from the holidays that you've already thanked, but it's a really nice touch if you reach out to them again, and you can engage the board. So this is a good time to give the board members a script and say, look, we had these donors that all gave over $2,000 or $1,000. I'd love to split these up and just have each of you give them a call. And the thing is, February is a good time. If you wait till May, June, a lot of time has passed. February, it's still fresh, but we're out of January. Things have settled down for most people. It's a really good gesture. It's a very nice stewardship effort. And then to engage the board, of course, is very meaningful. When what we want those board members to do is to say, I am a really proud board member of this organization, and I love that you're partnering with us by showing us your support and giving this gift. Okay, February is a good time to look at a sponsor acquisition campaign. So do you already have a corporate sponsor packet? Well, if you were able to put the finishing touches on your case for support in January, you could repurpose that case for support and turn it into a corporate sponsor packet. And this would be a good time to look at putting together a list of potential corporate sponsors. A great way to do this is look at corporate sponsors of other organizations, although sometimes they're tapped out if they've been supporting too many other organizations, but it gives you ideas. But look around you, look around your community, look at the places that you frequent, the car wash that you take your car to, the bank that you go to. Think about places where you could talk to people about being a corporate sponsor. And this is a good time to launch your corporate sponsor campaign. So do your research, come up with your list, your addresses, emails, contact person, phone numbers, have that in a spreadsheet, and start sending out your corporate sponsor packages. I like to send them out because then it gives me an excuse to call. Hey, by the way, we sent out this packet. Oh, you didn't get it? Oh, well, I'd love to come by and bring you another one. It just seems to me a little easier than making the phone call first, where you're sort of calling out of the blue and you're saying, well, I'd like to send you a packet. So if you've got something that's already gone to them, it just feels like it flows a little bit more easily, I think. And what is the projected expense? We definitely want to make sure that we have an expense. And then what could we possibly bring in? Well, this was blank when I started, so we're going to be ambitious and put in 25,000. How many corporate sponsor calls? And then also, by the way, yes, we want the board members to participate with that as well. So do they have ideas? Do they have leads? Do they have thoughts from LinkedIn, their connections, any individuals? We have our monthly newsletter on there again. By March, we're looking at spring campaign. So we really have to start thinking about what that's going to look like. Are we going to be sending out? Now, if you have something that happens automatically in May or June, you don't need to do a spring campaign. I'm just suggesting that because we've had the big push October, November, December. Spring is a good time to get going. Between March and April really should be a big push. As we get close to the summer, people check out. We know that. So March is a good time to do a spring campaign, or at least to start preparing for it if you don't feel like if you feel like it's a little bit too soon. So think about what that's going to look like. You know, we've got direct mail if you want to sort them and direct mail the donors over a certain amount and email the ones under, or if you want to do something to everyone. And then of course, if you can get supporters, visitors, board to promote the organization in some way, pass things along. I would get those grants on the calendar, whether it's the grants or the LOIs. You know, we did our research, so we have our 30 that we're going to work through. Well, it's time to start getting those out there. So start working on those grants if you haven't already, because you may already have started in January, February. We've got our newsletter. I always put quarterly board meetings on a development plan. To me, that's important because it also gives me that mental focus of, okay, so on my plan, I'm going to be able to review on March 27th everything we have done up until that point. So if I had another category here that this would be what I would like to put in here might be, how many did we actually send? How many sponsor calls did we actually have? So maybe we would create another column here and just say what we accomplished, right? How many calls we made? How many funders did we find that we're working towards? Did we actually submit the 3 grants? So that might be something to add to this to enhance it. Let's see. Let me stop for a second and pop over to the other plan. So the last one that I wanted to show you. Now this is does anyone have any questions so far? Is all of this making sense, how it all kind of comes together? Okay. Okay. Now let me just talk through one thing on this plan. That what we've been looking at is one spreadsheet. My suggestion is to create additional tabs. First of all, do it in Google Sheets so that you can share it with people, but create separate tabs and then sort the different. So create a tab that's only for the grants and you only have the grants on that one tab. Create a tab for all the board stuff. Put that on one. That way, if you have help, if you have people volunteering, if you have people supporting you, they can take on specific areas and just be working on that particular area. Maybe it's the mailings. Maybe that's where you really need volunteers and you need help. Well, then you've got the mailings all on one sheet without the board stuff and the board meetings and the foundation grants to kind of confuse things. So if it helps you to sort it out and put different tabs, I've seen people with just 7 different tabs of all the different tasks, and they've been separated based on the individual who's going to be working on it. So now let's go to, this one was created by Cosvox, and this goes back to 2020. I still really like it. So let me, and it also gives you great instructions on how to use it. Okay. So this is the Cosvox template. And they're also separating it by quarters. So they start out with instructions on how to use it. Here's an example of their SMART fundraising goals. And they've just written out what the goals are. So, okay, donor acquisition, this is what we're doing. Donor engagement, this is what we're doing. Donor retention. And this one is heavily focused on the fundraising as well. So they don't include as much on the foundations or on the board work. I tend to like having all of that in one place, as long as it's not programming. Everything that's not programming to me, I put in this plan. And I really call it a development plan because you're sort of developing all these different areas as opposed to fundraising, but it's personal preference. So if we look at the quarters, we have the survey, so fundraising activity costs, the hours that are involved, that's helpful. Estimated income, estimated cost, net income, also helpful. Prior year results, and is this aligned with our goals? I like that too. And then any other resources or notes. So I think this is the one that I was using up until last year. Let me just see the SMART goal. Okay, so this was their SMART goal worksheet example. And there's their fundraising calendar. Okay, so back to this one. They have Instagram and Facebook contest, new donation form being created, major donor recruitment, mails and emails, spring online peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, donor appreciation, April. I'm just sort of looking through to see if anything jumps out in terms of these activities, something maybe we haven't talked about. Recurring giving, direct mail, pool party fundraiser. Okay, so that's one thing I hadn't included, right, is events. Many of the organizations that we're working with currently don't have big events, or the events are handled by a separate team. But if you have events, they need to be included in your development plan, because you will have the preparation, you will have the mailing of invitations, you will have the stewardship of the guests, you will have all these different, you will have afterwards the thank you notes. So there are a lot of elements that will need to be included in the development plan. Okay, so then we've got a crowdfunding. Oh, impact update. Okay, so that's one that I didn't have on the other one, an impact report. So one of the organizations that we work with, out of the blue said to me, well, my stewardship report. And I said, oh, is that like an impact report? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, when do you do those? Twice a year. I said, wow, okay. And she says, yep, I do it in-house and I do it on Canva. And it's this beautiful 4-page with some photos of their activity, a couple of little infographics, a little written narrative, almost like a summary of their sort of monthly newsletter activities. Honestly, they just compiled it. And she picks her top 5 donors that give over $5,000 and mails it to them. And I tell you, the bang for the buck on that is huge, huge. She gets them, just goes to like a Staples or something to get them bound. It's really not very expensive, but it's an impact report. The great thing about an impact report is that if you've created it and you have it on your calendar and you know that you're going to do one every April and every September, let's say, you always have something fairly current that you can give to people in their hand, which I think is fantastic. So a mid-year impact report is a great thing to add to this. All right, I'm just looking through the rest of this. Okay, so of those 3, do you think that you can work with one of those and implement one of those development plans? Yeah.
Definitely.
What would be missing? So what would be something that somebody's thinking right now? Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. What comes to mind? What obstacles are we up against here? Dupree.
Yeah. Well, the first things always come to mind. Well, this is great information, but it's like any tool. Am I going to be able to use it when I'm already juggling so many other tools? Am I going to, am I going to go back to the folder once I spend that one week or one day on it, getting it filled out how I want to? Would I follow up, the second month, the third month? That's all it's about. Like I'm eager, I'm energized right now. It sounds so good, but that's just the only thing, You
Hmm.
kind of hinted towards the answer is maybe finding one or two people to share this like excitement with. So if I kind of drop off this month, maybe they pick up this month.
Hmm.
That's kind of what I try to see. But it's just a natural thing when juggling so much as a CEO.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. So two things come to mind. First would be a project. I meant to mention this earlier. Please try and use a project management system because you can put these elements of the plan into your project management system and then work and then build it out and put your notes in there and attach your stuff in there. And then you've got everything in one place. So, for example, we use Asana. It's free for nonprofits. I've used it for a long time. I absolutely love it. And I'll take parts of my planning and put them into Asana and break them out. And then I can just attach the link for the Google Doc that goes for this, the letter that I created for that. And if I happen to have a VA helping me, then I can say, hey, my VA, can you please work on this? I already put the doc in there. It just needs to be cleaned up and it needs to be emailed or it needs to be printed or whatever the case may be. So make sure you have a project management system that you like and that you're comfortable with. There are lots of them, right? There's Monday and ClickUp and all of those. I just happen to fall back on my old familiar Asana that I like. But the other thing is, Dupree, I think you have an opportunity, and you know a lot of people. You are very well connected. I think this is an opportunity for you to find a fellow nonprofit person and say, let's do this together. And then we'll hold each other accountable. Let's meet once a week, once every couple weeks. Let's just do a check-in. Let's do a check-in. Somebody that you see regularly, maybe that you could either even go for coffee with or something, and just say, all right, I'm going to give you my updates, you give me your updates. Or we work through this together because you know what? There's so many parallels in our organizations, honestly, in the work that we're doing. I mean, if you say, okay, well, I am going to talk to my board and ask them in the first week of January to each give me 10 names, email addresses, and addresses of some prospects. And I'm going to have that done by the 31st of January. Well, your person could also do that. Whoever your buddy is who's going to be your accountability partner in this. Tell them they're going to do the same. But everybody needs it. Everybody needs 10 new names from their board members. So maybe you can hold each other accountable in this process. I would probably lean on Tanaka to hold me accountable. But I will say, we're fortunate we now have built out a little bit of a larger team with a lot of VA support. And they are very good at holding me accountable. Very, very good at holding me accountable. So I think that's the other thing is Dupree, do you have a VA? Were you able to get someone to stick with you for a while?
Yes, I did, and I do. She's still here, just not as involved as she was when we got started because I
Okay.
hired a couple since then.
Okay.
But I still have it. That was a good
Okay.
call by you.
Okay. So that might be a possibility, having a VA, having someone that you work with to hold you accountable. But yes, absolutely, Vicky. I think to me, the accountability piece, large or small, I'd love to see some peer groups, two or three people, four or five people that just say, okay, this is what we're going to work through and hold ourselves accountable. But it is tough. And this is why I was saying the first three principles to me about consistency, immersion, and mindset are so important. How do we want to show up this year? How do we want to lead this year? How do we want our organization to be led this year? So really, really critical that we do some of this self-analysis. So this is what we would call the annual development plan. This isn't necessarily an operational plan. An operational plan is a little bit different. An operational plan is when you take the strategic plan that you've built out through a formal process with your board and you've done some feasibility work and you've done a SWOT analysis and you've built out your sort of, let's say, 3, 4, 5 pillars that you're focused on for the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And you've really drilled those down into the operational tasks that are going to guide the work that you're doing over the next 12 months. That's an operational plan. That's everything from doing proper orientations with your board members to reviewing how the data is collected from your programming to, I mean, it's everything that you have included. It could be a lot of HR stuff, could be that you're now going to go on ADP payroll and you're going to set up a 401k plan for your organization. I mean, who knows? Could be so many different things. So operationalizing your strategic plan is a little bit different. This because you're taking everything from that strategic plan and operationalizing, so nothing falls through the cracks. This is your development plan where you're picking and choosing the things that are going to move the needle development-wise. I include board because the board is critical. We all know how critical the board is. They have to be engaged, they have to participate, they have to be active, they have to be opening up their network of contacts to you and helping to facilitate a lot of this relationship building. So that's why I include the board. I think it's really important. And I think it's important for them to follow along and see this type of development plan in action. So anyway, hope it was all helpful. Thank you all so very much. Have a great evening, everyone. See you next month.
Bye.
Bye.